The angel of love smiles at you for listening to America's most iconic podcast, The Pod People. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, a foul tarnished,
slutty tarnished.
I'm your
nasty tarnished.
I'm your Kawaii King, Ben Sheets.
Hi, I'm Cleveland Mosier, but tonight you can call me Yoko, because I'm breaking up the band.
Oh, man.
Deep, you see? Yeah, it's got layers to it.
That's got layers.
Like an onion.
And who knows, by the end of this podcast, maybe you will have broken up the band.
It's a risk we take.
Are you graduating?
It's a risk we take every episode, and I just might be.
That's right. Well, that's how Cleveland is graduating from the podcast, moving on to bigger, better things.
Yep. Well, better is yet to be said.
Bigger and better podcasts.
Yeah, my new podcast is going to be called the Cleveland Show.
Steamer.
Oh. Either one is not great. It's a bad look.
Cleveland Steamer.
They're both bad. I think me calling it the Cleveland Steamer Show is
pretty good.
A worse look. Yeah,
I think it's pretty good.
I hate it. I hate that.
I support your
isn't
endeavors.
About shitting.
Well,
podcast about
steamboats. Old-timey steamboats.
Okay. It's false advertising, but I like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it's very on brand for you.
Can we talk about Perfect Blue?
I guess. I guess we can.
Yeah, let's.
That's why. That's why we're here, isn't it? Yeah, Cleveland chose the film that we were talking about this week, and as Cleveland is wont to do, he chose an anime for us.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of art. I paint things for a living. I art direct for a living, so I'm constantly thinking about technical shit in relation to art and movies. And some of the best technical art is in anime.
Would you say that
surprise.
Would you say that animation is cinema?
I would say it's le cinema. I would say it's kino, even.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd go that far.
Well, I can't be mad at you for the film you chose this week, because we're talking about Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue from 1997.
Yeah, an absolute banger.
Great flick. Yeah. This is my first time seeing it, too. I know yours as well, Cleveland.
This is my second time watching it, and I have to say, I liked it a lot more on the second viewing.
Yeah, I feel like I need to see it again to fully appreciate it, because there's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's
especially in the latter half.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lord knows, I've watched Paprika maybe 15, 20 times. It and Princess Mononoke are the films that I'm just always going back to and rewatching. I'm just so deeply in love with
Japanese culture.
Satoshi Kon. No, I mean a little, but no. Mostly, Satoshi Kon.
Would you consider yourself an otaku?
I would not. I would not. I would run from that term. I think I would go as far as to say, I'm an art taku. I like good art.
He loves manga.
Nope.
And
I sure don't. I really earnestly.
He's got a nice collection of anime body pillows,
swords, many
waifus, one whom's an aircraft carrier, correct?
God. It's a bit of an inside joke. But yeah. No, the only I like old school anime a lot. I'm a snob in that respect.
How old school are we talking about?
Oh, nothing.
Are we talking about getting the scrolls out?
Would you consider yourself an anime ronin?
No. God damn it. No, but in all seriousness, I do. I think the weebiest thing that I own is the original color print, part of the original color print series of Akira.
Yeah, that's not that
well. That's not counting the.
I think that's like a legitimate
the collection of kimonos.
Yeah, it's probably my most valued possession, honestly. I think shut the fuck up.
Man,
I'm gonna say kimono. No, I don't have those.
I was actually just thinking the other night that as a man of comfort, I really should own more kimonos.
Kimonos are fucking dope.
Kimonos are pretty cool. There's fewer ways to look cool than wearing an extra large pair of basketball shorts and a kimono robe open at the top, loosely tied at the waist with a gold chain.
It's so swag, and I gotta be real. Like the weeb association aside, it's fucking swag, and it's all the comfort of a robe and all the comfort of a kilt.
Yeah, wow.
You know?
You get that silk too.
Yeah, dude. Kimonos, man. Shout out to kimonos. The
Shout out to
unofficial
kimonos.
sponsor of this episode.
Shout out to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Satoshi Kon.
Shout out to Satoshi Kon. So, this is a movie I have been needing to see for years and years now. I always talk about how much I love Paprika. I just was a moment ago. And it's often a surprise to all my friends when I tell them I haven't seen Perfect Blue. So why haven't I seen it? I have been waiting for the perfect moment. The Perfect Blue moment to watch this movie. God damn it, we're finally here. I've finally done it.
Here we
to
are.
watch it with my boys, which was the perfect way to watch it. Perfect boys.
And how do
watch
you
Perfect Blue?
And how do you feel coming out the other side? Did it live up to your expectations?
It did.
What do you have to say about the allegations?
I didn't do it. I don't know what it is, but I didn't do it.
Look at my suit.
Look at my suit. It's too nice, too pretty, too perfect.
I
too
would
blue.
I would rather wear blue jeans than a tight business
Hey,
suit.
that's a lyric in one of the songs. That's good. Good. So I'm just gonna get out of the way since I've already been rambling about how much I love it. It's gonna come up a few more times, almost certainly. But you can see the DNA of this movie all over Paprika. There's a lot of similar match cuts, which Satoshi Kon is like his entire career.
Yeah, I mean that's just Satoshi Kon's
King of the
style.
match cut.
But using match cuts to simulate dream, like that ethereal dream sequence. It's not even really a sequence. It's pervasive throughout the film, but like dream sequencing, I think is a way to phrase it. There are some poses and movements where our protagonist, like she kind of like puts her shoulders out, cocks her head, and like leans forward. That's like identical to the way that like Paprika like leans forward. I think they were probably using like similar like the same model or same references.
Yeah, well, for lack of a better term, like Satoshi Kon loves to do quote unquote mind fuck movies. And,
Cerebral films, yeah.
Well, I would say they're very similar, but at the same time very different. Whereas Paprika is much more literalist in the surrealness and kind of dream world. This movie gets much more cerebral and obscure in how it goes about it because
It's a little more abstract.
Yeah, because it really plays with the idea of blending reality and dream to the point where you're not sure which is which.
Yeah, reality and
it's very
dream,
Lynchian in
reality,
that respect.
reality and fiction in terms
Yeah.
of like television fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like I mean, the plot of Paprika, which is just essentially Inception, is there's a dream machine, and what if the dream machine broke? And so, like, reality from the beginning to end of Paprika has essentially been stripped away, and we're left with this just cavalcade of insanity. And, we're trying to decipher what could actually be the reality, and in Paprika, essentially, like, every tier of the dream is also real. Whereas in Perfect Blue, like, if you step back away from it, there is a core narrative. There is, like, something very grounded that is happening, but we're spiraled away in this person's, like...
Well, yeah, we're seeing it from
it's tighter,
a
too.
limited perspective.
Yeah, and I really like that about it. I really like how these movies pair with each other, because, like, Perfect Blue is a more, to me, a more tethered Paprika. It's really about this one singular person and their identity that's being severed, but like it's still about that one person. Paprika is about like 6 different people, and it's just that little bit of spice, as they put it. And we're constantly being brought in and out of people, and like in dreams, we're brought in and out of people's different personalities, and the people kind of flow into each other. But here, like, it's all her. It's her different. It's the different masks she puts on and the different personas, and she has sort of different names for those different personas, but it's all like stemming from this one person. And and again, like we said, it's a much more grounded story in that sense, though it's still quite a mindfuck.
Yeah,
And I love it for that. And I like, at a certain point beyond that, it's apples and dogs. Like they're, for as similar as the movies are, they're also quite different.
Well, yeah, I would say Perfect Blue is very rooted in almost giallo traditions in a lot of ways.
Very much
Yeah.
so.
You know, with the kind of black love killer who's kind of obscured. It reminded me of opera in a lot of times with the crazed fan, you know.
There's a movie, it's on Shudder, there's a giallo film about an evil editor. I think it's just called Editor.
Oh, The Editor?
The Editor, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind
I
of
got
a
a lot of
pastiche of old giallo movies.
Yeah.
It was made in like 2014.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Black Dynamite of giallo.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite similar. Which, I mean, again, obviously it came out after Perfect Blue, so I'm sure there was some...
Well, I know that Satoshi Kon had originally written this to be live action.
Yes.
And ended up being animation, I think, due to budgetary constraints.
So, Satoshi Kon is quoted as saying, I'm going to paraphrase, but he originally wanted to be a live action director, but he found that you could show more with less in animation. So the number of frames it takes to like transcribe something in realism is much higher than the number of frames and the amount of like total control that you have in animation, right? In animation, you have to draw and render everything out. All of the backgrounds, all of the everything has to be fully thought through. And sure, set designers in movies do something similar, but because like there's just so much more detail and information that comes into realism, you can't show and like display things as clearly. So Satoshi Kon made like a very like careful effort to move into animation so that he could more like perfectly realize his vision.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense for something like Paprika, but I was really struck watching this film that it does feel shot's the wrong word, of course, because it's animation, but it does feel blocked like a live action film in a lot of ways.
What's interesting about Satoshi Kon's kind of pre-production work is, unlike a lot of anime directors and a lot of directors in general, he very meticulously storyboards every single shot out, so there's no kind of unknown in the process before like they even start production. They have every single shot drawn out in detail, exactly what it's going to look like.
It shows, too. Like, everything feels so, like, meticulously intentional.
In fairness, isn't too far from adapting a manga at that point.
Yeah, sure.
Like, to some capacity. Like mangas are, like, fully rendered.
Sure, but even that,
shot.
you're losing some in translation due to the medium.
No, you're right. Yeah,
manga changes aspect ratio, but from panel to panel, where like with storyboarding things out, exactly where the frame is at any point.
Also,
and that's how you get away with so many great match cuts.
Yeah, but I also do get the sense that like when Satoshi Kon was storyboarding this film originally, he was storyboarding a live action film.
Sure.
And then and like it really shows. It's like there's only a few sequences in this movie where I feel like they sort of changed after they made the switch to animation. That's just like a gut feeling. I'm not basing that off of anything. But like a lot of it feels more grounded than a lot of like animated films that I'm used to, I guess. It's not that's not like a criticism either. I really liked this movie.
Yeah.
And I love the way it looks, and I love the way it's sequenced.
I think having it as an animated film gives them a little more flexibility in some of the things, especially with her sort of mirror self of her idol self. Showing that, helps in animation because they can maintain it feeling grounded.
Yes. The illustrations, the backgrounds too, you can tell that they took a lot of steps to focus on realism and not a sense of heightened realism that so much modern anime has. Right? Like where modern anime that's set in present day often is even still feels like so elevated.
Mm-hmm.
These incredible grand like landscapes and sky settings. And also like the highlights are also like so crisply rendered and such. And here like the color is often made like pretty muted, intentionally. And like it's brought back and it's desaturated, and it works really well for keeping that realism and that grounded feeling for when we do enter a dream and where things do suddenly feel wrong. Even compared to Paprika. Like, Paprika is a really glistening and shining and bright and pretty. Yeah. And this movie's nothing like that. It's very grounded and heavy. It reminded me of Tokyo Godfathers in that respect, too, which is sort of a nice middle ground.
His final film. Satoshi Kon's final film. Well, we shouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves. We should probably explain, like, the basics of what the plot is.
Yeah, totally.
Mima, our lead, was a Japanese pop idol who decides to move into acting on the recommendation of her management, and it kind of covers her shifting from one role to the other while having kind of a weird stalker, and also kind of grappling with the idea of those roles and performance within those roles, as, you know, grappling with that and her sense of self.
And I always loved that premise. I've always known what, like, The Perfect Blue was about: a pop idol who has a stalker, and her world is sort of broken down. I always knew that going in. What I wasn't aware of is that it was about a pop idol who graduates and moves into dramatic acting. And what I really like about that is it takes it from being just a, like, conspiracy film or like a giallo sort of like killer film where this actress is being stalked, and it makes it more three-dimensional, where there's essentially like two core plot lines happening, right? And they coincide with each other by the end. And that's, she is transitioning into like a new phase of her career, and she's trying, and her quest is to become this great actress. Even though she already is coming from like a position of fame and notoriety. She's now like, she has a new goal and objective. And then in addition to like the X and Y, there's like a three-dimensional Z to the plot that gives it a lot of depth, and which is her stalker, who is upset by this change in her role, in her career, and how that affects her, and their sort of how their personalities meld by the end is really fucking neat.
Yeah. I mean, not to oversimplify it, but the whole movie is really about, like, performance.
Yes.
You know, it's about kind of the roles that Mima embodies, whether it's being a pop star or kind of the transition and, losing some of her old self within, that shift, and also trying to figure out what herself even means,
In that way, it reminds me a lot of Infinity Pool that I saw earlier this year.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that movie a lot this year. But yeah, they're like, it's very much about like the bifurcation of self and identity, and that the dissociation that brings, and some of the violent impulses that it awakes to. And it's cool in this movie because, like, without getting too far ahead of ourselves or getting too specific, like, most of the movie is from her perspective. We're limited to her perspective, but, like, the delusion is not, like, specific to her. It enfolds several people in an interesting way. Kind of a confusing way, I will say, a little bit. Sure. It's just like, it's so dense on a first viewing.
Yeah,
and it's
like I mentioned before, it's very Lynchian. It reminds me quite a bit of like Mulholland Drive.
Oh yeah,
or Perfect Blue Velvet.
Well, I would say Blue Velvet is even a bit more grounded. Than,
yeah.
Sure.
Where like I find the texture in this film of her kind of getting lost in her acting role in this kind of lurid TV show, crime show.
Yeah.
And that getting intertwined with herself to the point where later in the movie, not to jump too far ahead again, but we kind of lose track of which is which.
Yeah.
I find that so well done and so fascinating.
And it's a trope I've seen explored before in film. That idea pretty often. That idea of the actor sort of losing themselves in the role.
Yes.
And that idea I think has become even more popular in pop culture after like the death of Heath Ledger, for instance, right? Like that's when like everyone was talking about that concept of like, oh wow, actors can really hurt themselves like getting in Boston
He
roles.
really went Joker mode.
Yeah, and you know, it's that's always like a sort of like mythology about him that has bothered me for a lot, because it's not true.
But it is like the narrative that was built up.
Right,
around.
it's because he happened to die, right before The Dark Knight premiered, so that's when everybody sees him as the Joker. Oh, he went too Joker mode. He got too dark and depressed, and it caused him to self-destruct. When it's like, no, he had long time struggles with like opiate addiction and depression, and like that's it's this sort of like false story that's like attributed to that. But I mean, the comparison to this film is totally correct.
And something else that is, I think, made this movie age like a fine wine and become even more relevant now is the whole world of content creators and that idea of parasocial relationships.
Yeah.
Like that concept has only become more and more like understood and talked about as a society. Far more than just that idea of paparazzis, in the 90s. And
the people that I listen to on my favorite podcast are my best friends, actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Hi.
That's an interesting thing, because in Japan, like, idol culture, when this movie released, was
huge,
just as relevant as ever. And, I think that's the big thing it's commenting on, where, like, it's kind of transformed in our Americanized culture to have something similar, through stuff like content creators and streamers.
And it's also seeped into internet culture. I mean, the front page of Reddit, for instance, is constantly like I'm constantly seeing like HoloLive posts, come up. Back when I didn't have like a Reddit sign in, it was just on the front page.
I don't know
what
what
it was.
that is.
It's like it's a huge like VTuber, like Japanese like player thing. I don't really understand it myself. I have like maybe a toe in that world. But it's...
I thought you were the otaku of us.
No, stop saying that. No.
The anime Ronin.
But I do have a friend who has a much better understanding of these sorts of things.
Yeah, a friend.
Our long time friend of the podcast and previous guest in the podcast, Spence, who right before airing, I asked him to define a couple of things for me.
Okay.
And this leads nicely back into the beginning of the movie also. Because the film starts with Mima doing her final performance.
Yeah,
And
with her girl group.
With her girl
Cham.
That's right.
They kind of slap, honestly.
Not even kind of. They rule.
Oh yeah, bro.
All their tracks are bangers.
The Angel of Love smiles at you, baby.
Oh,
yeah.
Speaks to my soul, man. And she announces before their final song that she is graduating.
Well,
And
at least she tries
to announce.
There's some punks that are throwing shit and kind of cause a ruckus.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're throwing cans. And there's a fan in the crowd who really doesn't like that. And I love how that's all paced and played out. But I wanted to kind of stop and just sort of get into what graduating is, like as a pop star and as an idol in Japan. So I asked Spence, like, hey, can you kind of break down like the idol and, idol graduation thing? He said, yeah, so graduation is essentially a firing or quit, but it's done in a way that's a celebration and seen as a moving on thing with their time and their character as an idol remaining. Essentially a way to detach the character from the person. How fitting is that, right? Like, the character... Her whole struggle is detaching her character from her personality.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest
well,
of
as
the
soon
movie.
as she starts becoming an actor, her previous pop idol persona takes on a life of its own, like literally.
Well, there's definitely an internal struggle early on because, this was a pop group that kind of played local shows and never really hit it big.
They never charted or anything.
Yeah, and then after Mima quits, they hit the top 100, and she kind of has the struggle where she wants to feel like part of that, but she's already moved on. And
they're the other room partying.
Well, and because they never hit it big until she's out. So she's, they're better as a duo. They're better without her.
Which is cool, because you could also read the reality of the situation as the press of her leaving has more people talking about and promoting promoting Champ. So, like, it was the press bump that they needed to climb in the charts.
It's an Ouroboros.
Yes. And so we don't really know how much of that is because she left or
yeah,
whatever.
I will say we do hear one of their songs as a duo later, and I don't think it slaps quite as hard as
Do you think it's by design?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I think it may just be a personal preference thing. I prefer songs about the angels of love over not wanting to wear tight business suits and they want to wear jeans instead. I don't know. It's a little more banal.
On the topic of like their songs, I also really like that the song that she plays after she announces that she's graduating sounds like the closing credits of an anime.
Yeah.
Like, and
that's when they do the opening credits of the film.
Yeah,
right?
and they do the opening credits of this film in the style of anime closing credits because it's the closing of her career.
Yeah.
That's so fucking neat. That's so clever. Like, yeah, I love that shit, man. This movie's so fucking smart. Like, yeah.
Did you have more Japanese stuff you needed to...
Yes, Spence filled me in on one other thing.
Okay.
I've heard the term before, and it's a pretty gross one. And it's never said or stated directly in this film, unlike, her graduating. But it is kind of... I saw it as, like, one of the unseen kind of, like, ticking time bombs throughout the film. And it's this whole, like, idea in idol culture that's kind of pervasive. And it's this concept it's often referred to as, like, the Christmas cake. And it's really gross. Like, basically, okay, so I asked Spence, like, because I was trying to remember exactly what it was about, and it's that whole idea of, like, aging actors and they kind of fall out, or whatever. And Spence kind of, like, filled me back in on it again. It's the Christmas cake is due to the fact that children are usually given Christmas cakes growing up, which have strawberries in them, which means they perish very fast, and after Christmas are discounted and thrown out. When a woman is referred to as a Christmas cake, it's usually in their mid-20s, and essentially means that they are past their prime, because Christmas is the 25th. Gross.
I see.
Fucking gross.
Well, we
do get strawberry cake very literally.
That's
in
right, we do. I forgot about that. Yeah,
yeah,
so,
and it's when
that's the
she's
theme.
eating with one of her managers, Riku.
Riku, yeah.
And
Who's past her prime.
was a former
pop idol as well.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, how about that, right?
I also...
it's into detail.
The
right
theme
there,
literally
yeah.
did play, and she's literally eating a Christmas cake.
Yeah, and it's
Wow.
like, they do mention, too, that, like, right as she's doing this, like, she's just had her 21st birthday.
Yep.
So it's like, the fact that, she's now considered, like, too old and past her prime when she's, like, just turned 21.
Yeah, which, like
Pedophile culture.
weird. Yeah, yeah, I didn't say it, but, like, fucking weird, right? And, like, she's literally, like, entering her prime. Like,
I mean, we live in a pedophile culture, too, so...
Yay!
that's not commentary on Japan or anything. Yeah!
So, anywho, yeah. So, like, there is that the weight of her, biology hanging over her head. She's only got so long.
Yeah.
But to get her career really off the road before it's too late. Which also, strategically, is why she's, like, leveraging her career towards acting, dramatic acting, as opposed to being a pop icon, because, that has a much more limited timestamp on it.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me is the way they kind of introduce the shift is kind of her two managers kind of debating it and talking about it. And she's just looking down the whole time. And it feels like she's not really involved in the process
Right.
of that decision.
Well, she's not. The whole thing is just, like, her being pulled along by, like, a fucking, fishing line, basically. Because she's having to do all of this stuff to, like, that people keep telling her is just part of the industry, in order to succeed, to make having left her past life behind worth it, right? Because we see, like, the first time she's on the show, she only has one line. And, her managers are, like, arguing with, like, the show writer and everything. It's like, look, she left, like, her successful pop idol life behind for this. Like, you can't give her more than one line. They're like, oh, well, pop idols are difficult to work with, like, there's a stigma behind them. And so they finally convince them to, like, write more of her character into the show as they go, but instead of, like, giving her, like, a real character, the way they do that is, oh, well, okay, we're gonna write a scene where she gets raped at a strip club.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what she's got to do. That's all she's going to be good for.
Well, I do think it's kind of interesting how, like, the pop idol persona is, generally very childlike and innocent, as we've been talking about. And kind of in that shift to kind of detach from that, she is put into situations where she has to be forced into very adult situations.
Yeah.
Being in a kind of a rape scene, in kind of a naked photo shoot. She's really pushed into these situations where, like, that dichotomy couldn't be stronger.
Yeah.
That caused her to dissociate further, too.
Yeah.
Because she keeps telling herself, is like, well, this is the price. Like, this is the cost. This is what I have to do if I want to be a serious actor and be taken seriously. Not a big deal. It's not like I'm really being raped, right? But then when they shoot that rape scene, like, this film presents it as if she is actually being raped.
She dissociates.
And she dissociates, and it's just like, and all of these things, and the same thing happens with, like, the nude photo shoot later, where we even see, like, her two, like, former bandmates in Cham, like, sort of talking about her behind her back, being like, oh yeah, she's got to go do that photo shoot later. Well, that photographer is notorious for being able to get women to get naked during the photo shoot. And they're like, oh, and the other one's like, oh, well, she won't have a problem with that. You see what she's already doing on the show, blah, 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 and all this. It's like, all of these indignities that she's forced to suffer just, like, fracture her personality further,
which, like, pairs so wonderfully with that concept of, like, the dissociated killer. It's very, like, Fight Club. It's very reminiscent of a lot of these other, like, crime films where she keeps waking up in her bed after an event happens, and we don't know, like, and we're even led to think throughout the film, like, oh, is she the killer, because she keeps dissociating, and, maybe when she's in these fugue states, like, that's when she kills. We don't know. But before we get into the who's and whys and, like, the reveals there, I think that's a good opportunity to talk about the stalker.
Yeah.
Because how that also meets at the end. Like we mentioned, there's someone, like, watching her very closely during her final performance, who gets very upset and goes and even fights the punks that are throwing.
He's
cans.
one of the security guards at the event who's like watching the stage. The first thing we get of him is, like, he's, like, holding his hand up, and we see from his perspective that it looks like she's, like, dancing in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
And,
like a doll.
They do kind of do the very cliche thing of making, like, the creepy stalker, like, look like a weird, deformed freak.
Like a ghoul. He looks, he's got the Innsmouth look for sure. His eyes are, like, very separated. And I love it too.
Big sloth vibes.
He's got the long hair. Most of the time we only see one of his eyes because the hair is, like, in front of his face. But
he looks like if Sloth from the Goonies went to a con dressed as L from Death Note.
I like how you can almost never see the whites of his eyes. His eyes are always, like, dark or black.
He's got, like, gray fish eyes, kind of.
Well, I love that it's done intentionally, like, where he's made to look kind of like a, like, I don't use the term Innsmouth look lightly with it. Like, I think it's very intentional that, like, they made his eyes, like, so separated, and his teeth Two are like really unhygienic and like kind of jumbled, but they're always shot in a light that makes it look like he's got like wide shark eyes and sharp teeth, and he looks predatory. He looks like a shark that's stalking her in the water. It's really cool. Like, but whenever like the light is shown on him directly, he just looks like a gross nerd. And it's impressive. It's really cool.
Yeah, they do a really good job making him feel both intimidating and pathetic.
Yes.
Like, that's a really hard
Well said.
line to kind of go down. But they do it well. Like, I think a great example is the opening scene with him being introduced and, you know, someone throws a can on stage, the rowdy punks, and he goes to confront them, and he gets beat up.
And they beat the shit out of him, yeah.
But later he grabs one of their arms and they get freaked out and run off.
Yeah.
You know, so in that scene alone, we're getting kind of both sides of that.
Yeah, he's obviously very unstable, and you know, Cleveland, you made a joke at one point that he's a red herring because he looks like a fish.
Yeah, I did.
And it's like he does seem like a red herring because it's like, come on, man, this is like too obvious. Like early on, like some of the weird stuff's happening. Is like she gets like a weird letter that directs her to like a message board online where somebody is basically like role playing as her, but to like a
somebody's watching me.
Yeah, to like a highly specific, detailed. And she gets like a fax that's just like the word traitor written over and over again. She gets a phone call that's just somebody
because like even the subtitles where it's traitor written all over again, like the letters are like all the capitalization.
It's like the newspaper print, you know, trope where people just cut out letters.
Yeah.
And glue them together.
But she also gets a call.
Yeah, she gets a call where she just hears somebody like breathing heavily on the other line. It's like these are all, you know, like classic tropes. Like he's also the security guard at the TV studio or whatever because he's there. He's always on set when she's around. So it's like it does sort of feel like it's like, well, this is a little too obvious, right? And by the end it reaches a point where it both is and isn't. Because, like, he is the stalker, but there's also more to it than that.
Yes.
That is, like, less well telegraphed. So he's, like, half a red herring. I don't know. It's weird. I wasn't sure how I felt about it, like, in the moment, but I think I'm coming around on it.
I love it. I think it's really cool how he represents the concept of stalkers. Which he has, and I love it too because he's often not acting alone. We see throughout the film he's with like a bunch of other dudes who are also like, you know, Idol fans, and they're going to, you know, different storefronts and they're looking through like Idol magazines and announcements, and they're talking about the next big gig and why or why not like she's making the right career choices from the news that they're watching, and he's always kind of there.
Yeah, I didn't read that as him like being with them though.
Well, no, he's not with them, but he's always he's not with them as like a member of the group, but he's always around and listening.
Yeah,
and taking in all of that stuff.
He's always lurking. Yeah,
See, I read it as kind of the external expectations of the persona and the performance that Mima has throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, her visions of seeing her idol self that we increasingly see more and more of throughout the movie is her internal kind of perception of that.
Right.
And so I feel like it's kind of required to have both sides really being shown, both the external and internal forces at play.
That's what I think is so interesting about it, because like we do see her arguing with, you know, this sort of shadow self that she has that is still like wearing the costume that she wore in Cham and being like, you know, I'm not you anymore. You're tarnished. Like you've you've disgraced yourself, well,
Tarnished.
foul tarnished,
Slutty tarnished.
Meanwhile, like I'm still pure and good, and you wish you were still me. But then, like, we also see that the stalker is seeing that vision of her too. Like, when we see that he's, like, writing on the message board and stuff, like, she's, like, talking to him and telling him is like, that other me is not really me. That's an imposter, And she's keeping me from, like, achieving my full potential. So it becomes, like, a shared delusion that the two of them have. Even though they're never, like, interacting with one another, they're haunted by the same ghost.
Well, it works too because it only appears, or the ghost idol of her former self, right, only starts appearing after Mima starts reading the stalker board, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, it's
because it knows all the tiniest little details of her life, but still is like at one point, like, begging for help to get, like, off the show and stuff. She's like, well, that's not me, like, I didn't do that. So it's like, yeah, it's fueling her delusion that there is this past version of herself that has taken on a life of its own.
I always saw that as, like, him, like, kind of Grima worm-tonguing,
yeah,
a little bit.
But
it's like he's like kind of digitally projecting those ideas into her head as she gets caught up in all the things that this, like, hyper fan, the stalker, is saying about her.
But it turns out that somebody's
forget that it's not her that's thinking these things.
But it turns out that somebody's doing the same thing to him.
Yes,
I love his kind of stalker den, I guess you could call it.
Classic incel cave.
The pictures of her taped
it
up.
Stinks in there.
And even, like, one on the ceiling. And
I bet it smelled crazy in there.
Yeah.
And the art is incredible. Like, all the different posters, like, splayed out of her.
When they all start talking
to him. The
sequence
where they're all talking in unison at him.
What a feat, too.
Super unsettling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how pop imagery is portrayed throughout the film. In particular, there's a bit early on where the superfans go to, like, an anime manga store, and there's this great shot, sort of setting that up, of, like, an anime face. And now we're watching an animated film, but they take extra steps to make this, like, anime billboard look like anime, like, in that world.
All the proportions are even more hyper exaggerated,
like
so we know that it's anime within anime.
Yeah, it's like the second layer down of anime. And
too deep for me. I will never go that many layers of anime down. And I stay on the surface.
And it's great because, like, that weird chibi face is drawn, like, with the intent to feel kind of wrong and distorted.
Yeah,
which is great because, like, I mean, the term, like, chibi itself, like, literally means, like, distorted, or something along those lines. I'm getting it a little wrong, but I thought that was a fun, like, kind of point to touch on. Is, like, there's all these concepts and visual and written themes of, like, distortion of the self and disillusionment. Even with these other aspects of the world, like, we're getting to see those themes play out, in, like, an anime, and, like, these weird projections of, like, inachievable ideals. It's cool shit, man. So you touched on the fact that our stalker has things being whispered into his ear as well. Grima Wormtongue is being Grima Wormtongued.
Yeah.
As it goes. Should we go ahead and spoil all that shit?
It's like a worm triangle.
Worm triangle. I like that.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get into it.
There's plenty more we can unpackage and discuss, but I think we really kind of need to get to the end to retread from here. So big spoilers for Perfect Blue.
I think it's important to discuss too, because I'm, again, like, not sure how I feel about it, and I think that unpacking it is going to be helpful in determining whether I like it or not.
Well, you want to start?
Yeah. So basically, what's revealed by the end, after a long series of sort of, surreal occurrences where like her life really starts to blend in with the television show that she's filming.
Really breaks down.
Reality breaking down, all of this stuff, yeah. And it's eventually revealed at the end that her manager, one of her managers slash friends, Rumi, the other former pop idol, is the one who has been writing emails to the stalker as the quote-unquote real Mima, that's feeding him all of this information about her and sort of like planting these ideas that like the new Mima is an imposter that needs to be killed, that needs to be removed. And
I like how that's foreshadowed too, because he says in his like online diaries that Mima's been talking to him and that Mima's been sending him emails. And like the real Mima's like,
well, he says it when he attacks Mima and tries to rape her on the strip club set where she filmed the rape scene previously. Yeah, he says that like Mima has been emailing me every day, and it's kind of like a throwaway line at that point, but then it's like when it's revealed that it's actually Rumi, it's like, okay, things come together a little bit more. But it's also like because of a similar like psychotic like dissociative break that Rumi has had, where she has literally taken on the persona of the old Mima, and to the point of even like dressing like her. The whole last chase / fight sequence is sort of going back and forth, showing like the past ghost Mima, and then also just like Rumi in the costume.
And it's so well shot.
Yeah, that whole sequence is really fantastically done.
Well, I love how it's introduced, because she goes back to her apartment, and it looks like it does at the beginning of the film. Like near the beginning, she takes down the Cham poster to kind of move on to the next stage of her life, and her fish die.
Yeah.
At a certain point, and so she goes back to her apartment, and the poster's back up, and all the fish are alive, and so immediately she knows something's not right.
Yeah, she's like, this isn't my room.
This is not my beautiful house.
This is not my beautiful life. And
days go by. Sorry.
And then like Rumi appears dressed as like, no, this is Mima's room. And that sort of kicks the whole thing off. I wanna hear y'all's thoughts on it, because there's a part of me that feels like adding Rumi into the mix in this way is almost like one layer too much. I feel like it almost like convolutes it a little bit too much, and I'm open, very open, begging in fact to be swayed from that.
Here's my galaxy brain take, and you guys might not like it or agree with it.
Okay.
That twist isn't real.
How
it's
so?
Imagined. It's the culmination of Mima's reality
of all
brain.
of it.
It's her perceiving that, because think about it, like Rumi is a former idol, and so Mima sees that in herself, and she sees a future self of hers longing for the past to the point where she completely breaks. And that's why when Mima is chased, she only sees the idol until the very end.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but don't you also think that it's just as it makes just as much sense that it's literal, because Rumi, as a former pop idol who is watching Mima experience something that is very familiar to her, that she has gone through herself, and through her frustration at not having been able to save herself from that she assumes that persona.
Viewing it in a literalist sense, it does feel like a classic giallo kind of twist end.
So you think?
No.
So do you think then in that case, then even the part at the very end where she goes to visit Rumi in the insane asylum, that's also imagined?
I'm less into that, because I think at that point, like that's where they draw the line on realities. You know, like that's.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I think like that's where the movie finally like says like no, she's achieved her true self. Like she knows who she is now, because that's what Perfect Blue is, right?
Because she was able to put her old self away with Rumi.
Right.
That
That
Rumi absorbed that old personality of hers, and that she's able to lock it away with Rumi.
Right. Yeah.
Which
She's
is
a lot
exactly why I don't.
I'm into
know
that,
completely
actually.
If it's literalist,
Well, I think-
because it's kind of metaphor. It's saying,
Well,
like,
it's both.
yeah,
And I think it doesn't need to be just metaphor. Or I think it works better as both literal and metaphor, because like she's literally like Rumi is literally like her manager and acting as her manager throughout the film and engaging with like other aspects of her reality, and she is also acting metaphorically as her future self.
that's one thing I really love about this movie. I feel like there's space for both things to be true.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, exactly. Where, like, they play that up so many times throughout the movie earlier, you know, with her repeating things between performance and reality.
Yeah.
To really hammer that point home, where, like, it can be literalist and a metaphor at the same time.
Yes.
And
I
it
think
doesn't
the movie even,
completely matter, even.
During some of the scene for the crime drama, like during some of those scenes, she says as much, because the crime drama is specifically about is also about an actress who dissociates and thinks that she thinks that she's a pop star and she's killing people. And there's this great scene where we think that she's talking to like her actual doctor about who she is and her dissociations and whatnot, and then we pull back and we realize that it's all just a set. It's all part of, and we've done that several times throughout the movie where we start to, as the barriers break, you know, we don't ever know when we're on a set or when we're just living our lives. She's become so immersed in the character and in that world and I think that works. And I think it also works for her manager to be living so vicariously through her that she's essentially become her. And because of like the way that she is sort of incepting these ideas into her stalker, and then her stalker is sort of incepting these ideas into her, like she's sort of whispering into her ear from all angles. And so like, of course Mimi is like confused as to who Rumi is versus who she is, and Mimi doesn't know. That's the whole point of the final sequence, right? Is that Mimi doesn't Mima is having difficulty distinguishing Rumi from herself, because that was Rumi's whole goal in this, and that was Rumi's whole issue. So it is a shared dissociation between the two of them, and that's why I think it's so fucking neat. And it's shot just so well. I love all of earlier in the film when Mima is Mima is haunted by this like ghost of her younger self of Christmas cake past. Ooh, yeah.
Damn, there you go.
There we go.
Nice.
Yeah, she's haunted by her ghost of Christmas cake past. She's the ghost is like delicately like never flying, but like low gravity, like hopping
from lamppost to lamppost,
like hopping and gliding, and
Yeah.
it's so delicate, and it's kind of like almost Disney-esque. Like it's very like it's fantasy, and it's
one of those things that you really do need animation to do.
well.
Exactly.
Never do that in live action. It wouldn't work.
Not in 1997.
No, I don't know now either. But whenever we see at the end during the climax when she's being chased by that version of her younger self, which we then see as Rumi, there's a sequence where she has to leap off to a lower rooftop and fall, and then the younger version, her ghost, delicately just glides down and lands next to her, and she continues to be chased over the rooftop, and like her younger self is just delicately gliding and dancing after her, and it grabs an umbrella as it drops the sharp like ice pick, and it's leaping through the air, and again it's like fucking Peter Pan chasing after her, this delicate innocent cartoon of her younger self. And then finally she gets down into the city streets and she's running, and we get this wonderful shot where it's still the ghost of herself is delicately dancing, and then in the mirror we see Rumi, who's like old and fat, like wearing the same dress, huffing and puffing and just looking so like and just so worn out and angry. And I love that like the duality there, and how we get to kind of see it like it's a dream. And finally, when she has her on the ground and she's strangling her, I just love the shot of her younger face distorting and becoming Rumi, because Rumi, like the stalker, has those same wide, fish-like eyes, and so like as she morphs into Rumi, like her eyes like separate, and it's so spooky and gross.
The photographer does too, the one who like makes her get naked. He also has like the really unnaturally wide set fish eyes, and it really is just like a motif in the movie. It's like anybody who's real bad has the same fucking Innsmouth look. They're all, and I guess, you know, if you think about it, that really is kind of a tip off from the very beginning that Rumi that she's fucked up.
Which, Ben, I appreciate you were quiet on because you'd seen the movie before, but I kind of culled like earlier on, where during the rape scene we cut to the tech booth and we see Rumi there, and she's first like she's also dissociating. We see her cigarette. Well, before she even starts crying, she dissociates, and her cigarette like burns all the way. You know, it's like all the way down, and there's like a long ash on the end of it. And then finally during the scene, like she starts breaking down and crying. And during that point, I was like, "Oh damn, it'd be pretty wild if she was the killer." And I think Tease, you made the joke. Damn, what do you think? Like if they look like fish, they're
bad. Yeah, they're bad people. They're the bad guys.
They kind of were. Like that actually was the thing.
Yeah.
And it worked. It works really well.
It's very intentionally done. You know, this movie is like, in my opinion, one of the best examples of like subjective perspectives in movies, because it's very much all the way through Mima's eyes. You know, everything we see,
eyes.
In this film. Is through her perspective.
Yeah, except for the couple of instances where we see through the stalker's perspective.
Yeah.
But that's just like 2 or 3 times, really.
But even like both like her views of people kind of color how they are drawn, and the unreliability of things. You know, like I kind of feel like it's rare to see unreliable narrators in film. You know, they're very common in literature, but it's difficult to do that in film because, you know, the camera is kind of such a passive observer to the point where, like, we view that as reality.
Yeah.
And
as an external lens.
Yeah. That's why I kind of feel like animation really makes this movie work on a level where, like, traditional filmmaking would be limited, because like with that degree of separation of not knowing what's real and what's not in, you know, the world of the film, it works so much better in animation because there's that little bit of separation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could pretty clearly see this movie like in live action, just because of the way it's framed.
Well, if you want to see this movie in live action, watch the movie Black Swan, because Darren Aronofsky rips this movie off pretty wholesale.
Yeah, Black Swan is one of his that I have not seen, but I do know that he does like rip off shot for shot
he owns the American rights to this movie, solely so he can pull shots and sequences from it wholesale.
That's insane. You know what it reminds me of strongly is Darren Aronofsky seems to be like he pulls from Satoshi Kon the same way that the Wachowskis pull from Ghost in the Shell all the time. Because the Wachowskis are quoted as saying that they were like The Matrix was just their attempt at making a live action Ghost in the Shell, and they've never really like stepped away from that, for bad or for good. Most are bad.
Well, I mean, I think now the more accepted thing is that it's a big trans allegory.
Well, no, but I mean, like the whole aesthetic of The Matrix is Ghost in the Shell from like front to back, and the whole concept of like jacking in and realities breaking down. That's all. Like Ghost in the Shell is like a whole thing about false memories and being manipulated and all the rest of it. Like that's indicative of the story. So no,
this one is a whole nother level, though. Buying the American rights solely to pull things directly from it, and being
it's a lot more literal.
Yeah, ripping stuff off. You can just say ripping stuff off. That's a whole nother ball game.
Well,
honestly.
famously he ripped off the scene in this movie where she's like in the bathtub, like curled up in the fetal position, and she's got like her face underwater. He just like rips that off shot for shot in Requiem for a Dream. And I feel like I saw not too long ago like a text interview with Satoshi Kon. Somebody was asking him like how he felt about like Aronofsky like paying homage to him in Requiem for a Dream, and Kon was just like, it feels more like he's just like ripping me off, but it's cool, I guess. I might paraphrasing that, but Satoshi Kon's fingerprints are all over a lot of like big Western cinema. Aronofsky, like obviously the Paprika Inception comparison is unavoidable as well. Lot of filmmakers that are like the smart filmmakers for dumb guys, Yeah. I think Aronofsky and Nolan. I like films that they've both made, but they're both just like smart movies for dumb guys.
No, I couldn't agree more.
But like I said before, like it also feels like this movie, in a way, colored stuff that was to come, like Mulholland Drive. Even if it wasn't a literal inspiration, it feels like it's in that same lineage. You think talking about performance?
You think David Lynch likes anime? Do you think David Lynch has seen Evangelion?
I wonder if David Lynch has seen anime at all.
Yeah, I would love to know if David Lynch has seen Perfect Blue.
Yeah.
I like the idea that he has, but it's just like One Piece and shit.
Oh yeah, he has seen anime, but exclusively shonen stuff.
Oh god.
He's a big Naruto head.
I just like the way he runs, like a ninja.
I think it's really charming how he runs like that. It's.
I've been watching it for so long, and I'll never know if he actually gets the One Piece.
I know.
I could do this bit all night.
I know Wes Anderson is famously like a huge Evangelion head, which is like weird, but also like kind of tracks. I feel like. Do we have any other things we want to hit on Perfect Blue, or do we want to?
There is one thing I want to talk about: how great all of the kill sequences in this film are.
You're talking about Giallo.
One of my favorites is the director is in a parking garage, and faintly we hear the Idol song from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, the Angel of Love smiles at you.
He goes
the lyrics are different. They're more possessive. Yeah.
Oh, I thought the lyrics were the same. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Are those lyrics always that possessive?
Yeah. Talk about being aggressive. And
because I noticed that at the beginning, like when she's performing that song and
so different that you perceive it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like it sets up the rest of the movie so great because the song she's singing about the Angel of Love smiling at you, it's It's like, you got to be more aggressive with your love. That's how you'll get your shot. You know, like, that's the lyrics of the song. It's like, meanwhile, we're seeing her held in the palm of this creepy, ugly dude's hand as he's watching the performance.
So the song is played in the parking garage.
Yeah.
And he goes to
hears,
investigate.
like, faintly.
Yeah, and he goes to investigate, and he opens the elevator. And I love how, like, the audio is so loud that it's, like, distorted.
It's like kind of, there's a boombox sitting there
Yeah.
on the floor of the elevator, and when he opens it, it's like, it's like it's turned up so loud that it's like blown out. It's
Yeah.
like clipping, kind of.
Yeah, and we immediately cut to the elevator opening on a floor above, and he's dead. And, it's just so well
And the
done.
news, like, he was stabbed. He was stabbed umpteen times. Is what the news says.
Umpteen times.
Couldn't even stabbed so many times they couldn't even give an accurate count.
I got my boy like Caesar.
Yeah, I love the scene where she kills the.
Beware the idols of March.
Hey, okay, all right. I'll take that one. I like the scene later where she kills the photographer too, disguised as like the pizza man.
Yeah, that is so giallo right there.
Yeah, absolutely. But brutal.
Yeah.
Just like her, like
She stabs him in the groin. Like,
Yeah.
it's rough.
Through
And
the
then-
hand when he's trying to go for the
Oh
phone.
god, that shot! Yeah, when he puts
Yeah.
his hand on the phone and then immediately like the ice.
Well, the very first one is like right into his eye. She just
Yeah.
stabs him right through the eye. Also, eye trauma, very giallo.
Yeah, Fulci would be proud.
Yeah, Fulci and Argento would both be proud. But yeah, then when she like gets him into the apartment, she's like on top of him and stabbing him, and like every blow of the knife is like punctuated with like a flash frame of her like naked and vulnerable during the photo shoot. Just like close-ups of like her breasts and like her butt and
What's cool is with past context or with future context, it's Rumi, but
is it?
Yeah, but we're seeing the scene play out as Rumi would see it. Like Rumi, at this point of the story, is dissociating and identifying herself as Mima. So during this sequence, when she stabs him to death, like she's perceiving herself as Mima, and she's getting revenge for this photo shoot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can read it as that.
Yeah, that's what I saw it as. Like all the kills throughout the film, like whenever. Like, it's either the stalker or it's Rumi. Like, and, because at this point, Rumi sees herself as the true Mima. So she's going around avenging these actions that have, been taken against what she sees as slights against the real Mima.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that for the writer in the elevator, because that sort of we don't actually see that. We only see like the aftermath of it. But I don't know, like the scene where she kills the photographer is like so personal and like subjective, like from her perspective, that I kind of feel like that's might actually be Mima. I don't know. I think it's...
No, I don't. For me, I really like that Mima truly does leave this movie whole and good. Like,
I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
but
well, I do love that this movie
I think
is...
murdering is probably not whole and good, but...
I love that this movie is abstract to the point where both things can be true.
Yeah.
And I think this movie is really dense and rich in that respect, to the point where you could watch this movie multiple times and have multiple interpretations.
Yeah, because I mean, if it could just as well be the stalker killing the photographer as well.
The stalker less often perceives himself as her, but like
right, but he's acting as her hand. He's acting as her will. So he's doing things like on her behalf. He is portraying her on this message board. He is writing as her. We even see that his mouth, while he's typing, his mouth is moving, but her voice is coming out.
That is true, yeah.
So I think that, like, I think you could make a valid argument for any of the three of them doing just about any of the kills. And I like that it's open to interpretation like that.
It is, like, and so I think my read of it, after one watch, and being open to change over time, is that what I like to get out of the film is that she has this crisis of self, of identity, and through all of these events, she does manage to rise above, discover who she truly is, and come out of it unscathed and whole. And maybe I'm reading too deep into this, but like her former self and the fear of what she could become are both red and pursuing her out of this very real world. And the world itself is often cool colored and blue. And it is until the very end where she says, "No, I know who I am now." And it's blue. It's a blue reflection. In the real world, she finally finds herself tethered. That she's able to live her life just as who she is and pursue her career and her dream and just and be Mima.
I
think that if she murdered a whole bunch of people and she didn't actually have a psychotic, she had a psychotic break of identity that she's healing from, and that she through these experiences these traumas she's able to find herself again. But if she actually murdered a whole bunch of people, yes, anyone is capable of redemption and she could be saved, but I just don't know if that works as cleanly, if that puts as good of a bow on the ending.
I mean,
murdered all those people. I think the big reveal is throughout the movie is we don't know if she did murder those people or not. And at the end of the movie, when it's revealed that the true evil is her manager, who's been living vicariously through her, that reveals that her manager killed everyone. But they got so caught up in identity that the line was blurred. But the reality is that her manager killed all those people.
I mean, I think that that's a perfectly valid reading and one that I don't think is wrong, but I think you can still come to the same conclusion where she comes out of the movie being whole and her true self and no longer having a conflict of identity after going through a cleansing fire, metaphorically, where she has burned away that outer self to reveal what is in between, and that what she has done through all of that is, violence upon herself and others, and that being able to literally lock Rumi away allows her to put those sins onto something external and purify herself of them. It's maybe not as an objectively good ending where she does come out clean and pure, but it still allows her to come out feeling clean and pure, whether that's literal or otherwise. And I'm not saying that that's the correct interpretation either. I think that I
think both are valid reads.
Yeah.
And again, I think part of the magic of this film is, with it being so abstract and open to interpretation, the way they pull that off is through the attention to detail in every single element.
Yeah.
Where, I feel lesser movies that try to be ambiguous or whatever and lack detail just feel sloppy. This feels so tightly crafted. To the point where those things can both be true.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, this feels like a movie where your interpretation of it can change from one viewing to the next.
Yes.
I mean, that's true of a lot of movies, but I feel like I could watch this today and think one thing and watch it tomorrow and think something else. And that's
because, good art...
That's the magic of movies, baby.
Yeah.
And, good art, it provokes cognition.
That's mindset.
Yeah. That's great. Makes you think.
Well, shall we rate this?
Yeah.
Cleveland, this was your pick, so you start us off. You do the honors.
Damn, I wonder what I'm going to give
What
this
could
movie.
Cleveland possibly give this movie?
What in the world could I give Perfect Blue? Well, it's a perfect 5 out of 5.
We knew it at the end of last week's episode. and here we are.
And here we are, yeah.
Ben,
An ending easy to predict.
yeah. Unlike this film.
This is actually a 5 out of 5 for me, too. I love this movie. It's maybe Satoshi Kon's best film. My opinion on that changes with
They're
the
all
wind.
so good.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic movie.
Yeah, I wasn't sure going into this episode if I was going to give it a 5 out of 5. I was leaning more towards a 4.5, but after the discussion, I think y'all have sort of brought me around on some of the things that I was a little lukewarm on, and I won't keep this from Golden Pod status.
Baby!
So it'll be. That's 2 weeks in a row.
Hell yeah.
2 Golden Pods in a row. I feel like they come in groups when it happens.
Yeah.
I also
we'll hit like a little stride where we're like, well, we only want to talk about like bangers for a minute.
And then we get tired of being on top of the mountain. We have to descend back into the valley of dog shit.
And then a turkey squawks and ruins it. Hopefully that's not next week's movie.
We'll find out.
That's right. Well, we're finally going back to the movies next week.
Yes.
We're finally going back to the movies. It's been we've been a little bit of a mid-year slump for the last couple of months. There's not been much.
There's been a few big horror movies coming out, but they're not ones we're terribly interested in.
I did go see The Boogeyman, and I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But I don't really give a shit about Insidious, The Red
I was
Door.
about to say.
But anyway, next week's film I am very interested in. We didn't predict it because it was not on our radars at the beginning of the year, but we're going to be talking about Talk to Me, the new Australian horror film from A24.
Which should hopefully be a cool episode. As of recording, I am flying out next week to San Diego Comic-Con for work, and I am hopefully going to be going to a screener of that's hosted by some pretty cool people. I'm not 100% if that's going to happen yet, but because of all the writer's strike stuff, like Comic-Con
the writers and actors strike,
all sorts of things that are up in the air right now. But
I wouldn't bank on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't bank on it, but maybe I'll have some cool insights that week, or maybe I'll have just gone to an aquarium instead. We'll find out.
Well, you'll have seen the movie regardless.
Yes, that I will have done,
and we will be here to talk about it.
Quick thing, I would feel bad to not touch on before is, have either of y'all seen Millennium Actress?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay. Do you think it plays into Perfect Blue anyway? I feel like it would be bad for us to not touch on it. I was going to earlier. Because I haven't seen it.
It's a great movie. I feel like it plays in a middle ground between, Perfect Blue and Paprika, where it's a bit more directly surreal.
Is it also about a pop star?
No, it's been a long time.
It's about a
since I've
millennium
seen it.
actress, Cleveland.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't
You'll
know.
have to
I haven't
watch
seen
it.
it.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it to find out. Okay, cool. That's all. I wanted to kind of touch on that because I feel like there's probably some themes there, but I haven't seen it. So.
All right. Well, next week's episode is Talk to Me. Come listen to us talk to you. Sponsor time.
Sponsor time. Well, we already know this episode is sponsored by kimonos. But the shelf is glowing red and angry when I say that. I think there's another sponsor.
Yeah, the
this
shelf
week.
did not. The shelf did not clear that.
Yeah, the shelf is saying, "Commode, no, it's not." The actual sponsor this week is your greatest personal failure. What have you done? We know you did it, and that's this episode's sponsor.
Another very appropriate sponsor for the film we've talked about. I think.
So
Yeah.
it keeps happening.
Keeps happening.
We don't know what the sponsor shelf
It's
will
almost
say.
It's almost like we're
fake.
being guided by some sort of intelligence from beyond. All right. Well, that'll do it for us this week. If you like the show, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/podpeoplepod.
It ain't Patreon.
It's Patreon. As always, shout out to our honorary pod boys, Sam, Zach, and Micah. We love and appreciate you guys.
All the love. Thank you.
Yeah, join the Patreon. You can get into the Discord and come hang out with us.
Hell yeah.
You can follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod and at letterboxd.com/PodPeoplePod, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. And once again, you can see all of our golden pods there. Last week, Tremors went in there. This week,
yeah.
Perfect Blue went in there.
Very different movies.
Very different. Will we hit a three-peat next week? I wouldn't bank on it, but we'll see. Never know. You can follow me on Twitter at SomeSpookySnake.
For my recommendation corner, I feel like I need to recommend some sort of anime. So I'm going to recommend the anime film Golgo 13, The Professional. It's kind of
What is that?
It's an awesome 90s anime movie where it's
anime.
like James Bond-esque secret agent.
Do we have a contender
Where
for the
he's-
title of Anime Ronin?
I'll concede it willingly.
No.
Oh, nope.
What's up, Captain Weeb?
I was looking through my letterbox for anime recommendations because I couldn't find anything that wasn't obvious. Like everyone's seen Miyazaki, everyone has seen fucking Grave of the Fireflies or whatever, or heard of it. But Golgo 13, pretty dang.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, I was looking for a deep cut.
My problem is there's so many like great anime movies I've heard about, but I still haven't seen. There's just so many good ones. So anyway, thank you for the recommendation, Ben. This week, MFN is out. Go play My Friendly Neighborhood.
It was out last week, too.
Oh,
but
well, even better. It's still out. It's
still
there.
out there.
Why haven't you played it yet? It's been a week. It's there, and it's fun. And it's supporting a cool indie studio.
We should get some sick MFN merch as well.
That's a limited edition one.
Oh,
For sure.
okay.
Yeah. I am trying to get you guys shirts, though, because you were the inspiration for that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
So don't get them because they're already
there's
sold
other
out.
cool merch, but there is other cool merch though, so you can go and leave that in. But but yeah, there's all sorts of cool shit. But most importantly, go check out My Friendly Neighborhood. Oh, and lastly, of course, thank you again, Spence, for your wonderful
Being
guiding
our
hand.
resident otaku.
No, don't call him that. He's not here to defend himself. I don't even know if he would, but yeah. No, thank you, Spencer.
he can fight us on that next time. Well, thank you, Spencer, and thank you, dear listener, for joining us for this perfect episode.